what is the point of bringing Hillary Clinton in to ask her about Jeffrey Epstein at all?
Well, I assume they thought maybe she might have some views on it. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein visited the Clinton White House 17 times. Her husband is in the files. He's in photos. I'm assuming she has an opinion about this, may have encountered some of these folks. Ghislaine Maxwell went to Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So, look, I'm not sure what she had to say. My understanding is we're going to get to see the tapes of both of them, and then we'll find out what they know. But I take her at her word that she claims she didn't know him. And the real meat of this week will probably come tomorrow when they get Bill Clinton under oath.
Why is it relevant what her opinion is on Jeffrey Epstein? I thought we were trying to find out whether people were involved in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes.
That's right. And also they asked her about how she felt about her husband being with Epstein or on the plane. And she says, this isn't about my feelings. I'm telling you what I know, and I don't know anything. And the interesting part about this is they knew that this is what they were going to get out of her. They weren't going to get anything out of her. She told them over and over and over again that she had no information about this. They asked her about UFOs. They asked her about Pizzagate. She, at the end, stated in her statement that you played a little while ago, she stated that she had to tell them how to investigate, how to conduct an investigation, because they had not asked previous people that they had deposed about Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. And so this is all political. And the fact that they even brought Hillary Clinton to answer for her husband is just laughable. I think at the end of the day, this is what Hillary Clinton does best. She knows how to take on Republicans, and she essentially told them, and she walked out of there telling them, you are not serious about this investigation, and if you are, this is how you run one.
Well, as my friend Joanne Carducci said, there's three people mentioned most in the Epstein files, and that's Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Donald Trump. One of them is in prison, one of them died in prison, and one of them is the president of the United States. But we're deposing Hillary Clinton. It doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day, the government has repeatedly lied about these files. They refuse to release the full files. Then they're hiding the documents, and now they're pointing allegations everywhere except at the president, who is in the files the very most. And this is a huge distraction to use Hillary Clinton, the vicious, evil Hillary Clinton, as a distraction from what they've actually done.
As a distraction from not going after Trump for 4 years.
Let me play. This is Hillary Clinton talking about what Republicans did not do when it came to the deposition of other people who are also in the Epstein files.
The best exchange that I had came at the very end when, contrary to every other deposition they have taken, no Republican member asked any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell to anyone else they have deposed. And in fact, the Republican members didn't even show up for the deposition of Les Wexner.
How do you even explain that, Jason? They don't show up to a deposition of the man who everybody acknowledges is the source of a vast amount of Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and was connected to him for ages?
Well, James Comer was having surgery at the time, so he actually has a good excuse.
Just answer her question, though. What's her
No
question? Why wouldn't they
Republican
show
shows
up?
No, I don't know
Not
why
a
the other
single one?
Republicans chose not
I
to
mean,
show
it
up.
seems to show a lack of seriousness.
Well, I think it's a lack of seriousness when we decide to turn this into actual politics. And that's part of the reason why I think there's such pushback from just immediately saying, well, why isn't Trump showing up? I mean, on one side, you have, say, Hillary Clinton shouldn't be showing up because that's purely political. She's already said she has no connection and she didn't do anything wrong. Okay, well, Donald Trump has said exactly the same thing. He hasn't done anything wrong. Well, and all we've heard for the last year is these implications that because his name is in the files, that he somehow did something wrong, he committed a crime, except no one's actually telling us what the crime was.
They're holding back all the files that have his name.
Okay, I think
that's absurd because you've already.
I think everybody is tired of the political games. People are just tired of this. I mean, why would you question Hillary Clinton in the first place? I read her statement today. She said, I've been fighting for women and girls my entire life. Why are you questioning me instead of working to make sure all the files are released? Why are you coming after me instead of making sure that the redactions are proper redactions that protect the victims and expose some of the powerful people and their politically connected people? Why are you questioning me instead of questioning the guy that said, I want to go to the wildest party that you have on the island? When is that going to be? Why are you not questioning the Secretary of Commerce who says, I wouldn't go near that disgusting guy, and then it turns out he did go? to the
Congressman,
island on a
why did
boat.
you not ask those questions for the 4 years in which you had control in
I was never
the White
paying
House?
attention to this issue. I have to be honest. It was
No,
not
I
a big
know.
issue. And it's become
Why
such
now then?
Yeah,
because
why now?
It's
That's
not my
political.
big issue. You never heard me talk about it before.
You seem pretty passionate.
Because I'm here tonight to talk about this issue, and I'm disgusted by the fact that the American people don't know who to trust about anything.
What did you
anymore.
think about when your colleague Ro Khanna went down to the House floor and doxed 4 people who apparently had nothing to do with this whatsoever? Did you think that was a good use of time?
I actually didn't know that it happened.
There are
Scott,
hundreds of thousands of.
But hold on, I've heard this being brought up a few times, and frankly, I'm not understanding what the argument is. Are those people in the Epstein files?
Yeah, that's
are
part of the
they
point.
victims?
They were
are they
in it.
hold on? Are they victims of Jeffrey Epstein?
They're victims of Ro Khanna.
So no, are they victims of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't think so.
So
They're-
what does the law say about whether or not their names ought to be redacted in the files?
It has nothing to do with redactions. It has to do with the
It
fact
does,
that a
because
member
you're-
of Congress
he's being
went down
accused
and
of-
doxed people
Hold
who
on.
did nothing wrong and had nothing
Hold
to
on,
do with
first
it.
of all, the use
You
of
don't
the
know
word.
You're
that.
decrying
It had nothing
politics.
wrong
Why
with
are
it.
we-
You're decrying
hold on,
politics.
but even
What
still-
was that?
Even
Guys,
now,
one
why are
second,
we,
just
why are
one
we having this
second.
back and forth? I mean, the reality is we know that Jeffrey Epstein did some really bad stuff. We know there are millions of files that have not been released. We know there are millions of files that have redactions that don't make any sense. Why can't we just get to the basic facts of the situation? Why do we have to play the game? Ro Khanna,
Because
Hillary
these guys
Clinton.
are running cover. That's why they're running
Doesn't make
cover.
any sense.
There are
Cover for
hundreds
what?
of thousands
Cover for
of
what?
documents naming people, including the people that Ro
Yes,
Khanna
and
said on the
revealing
floor,
Are you
people's-
accusing
who are in the
revealing
files.
people's
accusing
There are
names is
thousands
not
of
doxing.
victims.
No, but
Are you
I
accusing
think,
them?
Abby,
It
the
is not
implication
doxing.
from
Hold on,
Ro Khanna and
let me
others.
just make this point. It is not doxing to name a person. That is not what doxing is. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there are a lot of people who are innocuous people in the Epstein files. Unfortunately, Congress passed a law that says that unless they are victims, there is no justification to withhold their names. So to those gentlemen, unfortunate that they are being brought up. If they're innocent, fine. That's fine. But there's no legal requirement to withhold their names. And in fact, withholding their names is probably a violation of the law. So I don't understand that whole argument from the beginning. And secondly, there is so much outrage about revealing the names of random men and zero outrage about revealing the names of actual victims. That actually happened in the Epstein files. Why is there no outrage about that?
I don't know why you're saying there's no outrage. I mean, I was on this show when that had happened, like the day after, or a couple days after, and we all were on the same exact page that it shouldn't have happened. The problem was when you're pushing to get millions of documents out there, mistakes unfortunately get made. That is the reality. It is true. It's not something any of us want. No one wants to see any of these victims have anything other than justice. But this idea that there was no outrage, I don't think that that's accurate. To the point of the implication of the individuals who were named, it's not so much that they were named. To your point, and it's valid, and I hope everyone understands this, there are people who are named who have literally nothing to do with anything tied to even the rumor of a crime in those files. But Ro Khanna
People
and
like
some
Hillary
others
Clinton.
decided to go out there and imply that, wow, look what we just found. We found co-conspirators. We got people.
No,
for-
they,
Yeah, and
that
the
is a
congressional
problem.
why are
Republicans
these
went out
people's,
there-
they said, why are these people's names redacted
They
when
went
they
one
should
step
not
further than that.
be redacted? That's just a simple.
part of the law.
That's part of the law. Now, I
Agreed.
do want to play this one thing. This is about on the Trump of it all. Anna Paulina Luna and other Republicans and the president, they keep insisting that the president has been exonerated. But I want you to listen to this and listen to what she's saying and what one of the actual victims has said about that.
We asked specifically the victims, and we were all there, as well as the Speaker and the Democrat members of Congress, if the president was involved, and they exonerated him. So why would we bring in the president of the United States, who's been exonerated, who cooperated with law enforcement, and who released the files?
I had, Rep. Anna Paulina Luna say that the victims have exonerated him. I have not yet talked to the DOJ. You think the Trump administration has reached out to myself? I can't speak for my survivor sisters, but I'm pretty close with them. I'm pretty sure they would have shared that with me.
Again, forget about Trump for a second here. The FBI, she's a victim. The FBI hasn't talked to her.
Yeah,
What's happening?
and that's extremely concerning. And I think that is the big question that survivors are facing. I think what typically happens in these types of situations is the U.S. Attorney's Office takes lead, and they should be doing all of those interviews. If someone is coming out and saying, I have more information, I have new evidence, it is the FBI's responsibility to go figure out what that new evidence is and potentially open a case for investigation again. And so I think that there is a big question about why the Justice Department isn't necessarily looking at it, isn't necessarily, if someone is saying they have new information, taking that interview. And it just, to me, it seems that there isn't the political will within the building to do that. And so I find it interesting that the whole reason why this started was because Trump and Pam Bondi wanted full transparency because they thought that there were Democratic members and Democrats in the Epstein files. And it started off as political, completely political. And now we are where we're at, where the survivors are not being able to tell their story.